All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Teach Me Tuesdays. Of course, I am here. I'm your teacher, Ursinity. I'm here with teachlings leafypeachy. Hello, Peachy.
Hello.
And fellow teachling beedub. Hello, beedub.
Hello.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, B, I think this is our first episode as a teacher-teachling duo. I'm trying to get used to all the combinations and whatnot.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's our first episode ever, because I wasn't with you on the Patreon one either, was I?
Oh, yeah,
so
that's true,
I think
actually.
This is our first podcast together.
Hooray. I'm sure it'll go well, hopefully. Maybe it'll go horribly, and then we'll just never have this combo ever again.
Yeah.
So maybe the first and possibly last beedub Ursinity episode. All right, so let's just kick this off, shall we? B, you did not have homework yet because Proud is the cool teacher and I'm the teacher. And I did give homework to Peachy, though. And so, Peach, let's just remind everybody what your homework was, and then let's talk a little bit about how it went.
Yes. Okay. So I'm specifically focusing on mastering the offlane and
mastering. A very bold claim.
Yes. Well, attempting to master. We'll put it at that. And 2 weeks ago, you gave me homework to practice creep blocking and creep control with offlane Earthshaker and Clockwork or Clockwork. And I've been focusing specifically on Earthshaker.
Uh-huh.
So I have 4 games that I've played in the past 2 days that I specifically had replays of that I was watching on my Twitch. And so what I've learned so far is to single blocking is good with my Fisher, like you said at the very beginning, at the very edge of the base where it starts to go down onto the low ground.
Close to tier 3.
But the first time I did it, I blocked myself in with the creeps, which I don't think was the play. The creeps were still because then they ended up, I wasn't able to body block them any further.
Yeah.
So I blocked myself in, and then the creeps weren't pushed further than they would have been, but I still I wished I had been able to bring them a little closer to my tower because I was still kind of out past the river.
Okay.
And the second game I tried doing a double Fisher block, and that was bad. That just wasn't good because then the enemy creeps were under my tower, and then my creep wave pushed, and I had a Skywrath in my lane, and I wasn't able to. That threw off my whole lane. And then so 2 other things that I noticed specifically about when I play offlane Earthshaker is that I forgot to use Fisher to creep control after the first or second wave. During the middle part of the laning phase, I was so focused on trying to not, get ganked or that kind of thing. I just forgot to use Fisher to pull the creeps closer, that kind of thing. And I also struggle with mana with Earthshaker.
So what were your starting items generally? Were you doing the same starting items every game? Or
I pretty much I experimented with I always started with 1 Tango, a Salve, because obviously the shrines aren't available at minute 0 anymore, and a Stout Shield and a Mango. And I would buy myself a ward because it's solo ranked and nobody wants to buy all of the support items. And that's what I would start out with. And then I did exchange the Mango for 2 Clarities. And I might pick up an Iron Branch if I had any more money. But I found that the Clarities, I would just get them canceled by whatever range support was in the lane.
Yeah, in general, every time I play offlane, or every time I play 4 or offlane, and usually when I play 5, I try to keep 2 Clarities, just as a general rule. Even if they do get canceled, you just kind of play around that. I know I've had some really hard safe lanes where I'm playing against an offlane Earthshaker that just brings way too many Clarities to lane, and either he plays it really well, or the offlane or my supports can't cancel his Clarities, let's say they're roaming or whatever, and they just spam out fissures just for even practically seemingly for last hits. And so you definitely want to have 2 Clarities, just as a general rule of thumb. I've seen even some people from the get-go, they pop a Clarity after the first fissure block, and then they block it again but there's like some weird angled block that people do that like makes it so the creeps meet exactly outside of your tower range, compared to, like you said, when you double blocked it, they were under your tower.
Yeah.
But that's also depending on what the enemy block is like, and so that's kind of finicky. So I like the single block.
Yeah,
But
the single
in general,
block was good.
Yeah. But in general, did you feel like it was like productive? I know you were mentioning that like your future questions that we're going to go into are mostly Earthseeker centric. But in general, though, you like it was a good experience. How many games did you play, like ballpark?
I played I want to say 6 Earthshaker games. I had to evacuate for the hurricane, so I didn't get to play as much Dota as I wanted to. But
still 6 games is a good amount.
I played 4 solo ranked. I'm pretty sure it was 4, and I lost all 4 of them. And yeah, each game was its own game. One of them, there was literally nothing I could do, and I don't want to be the person that blames my team, but sometimes you just have really bad teammates, and that was one of those games. And there was really nothing that I could do. But I was trying to just focus on, like, what can I do, win my lane, or at least not lose my lane, that kind of thing. But I definitely learned a lot from every game, and that's why I have more questions.
Good, I'm glad. So, B, I did not give you homework, since obviously I was not on show with you yet, but you've been focusing primarily on safe lane, correct?
Yes.
In your previous few episodes?
Yeah.
Did you have any recent revelations, or like how's your last week or so in safe laning been? Like hero wise, win rate wise, etc.
I think it's been pretty good. I mean, I've been winning over the last 20 matches. My win rate's been 60%, so it's definitely winning more than losing. I'm still kind of struggling a little bit with my GPM. I think that's just more so like early on, I'm not that great at last hitting. I am practicing that, so I think that's kind of quite a big contribution to that. But yeah, generally it's been going well. I've been playing PA, Monkey King. I've started to play some Terrorblade actually, which is
nice,
super fun. I'm not really sure whether I should be, because he's a little bit more complicated than the other kind of carries I've been playing, but he's just so fun. I can't not.
Yeah, I probably didn't play Terrorblade for like a year, and I've just in the last like month played like maybe 3 or 4 Terrorblade games and had a blast every single time. So in the last week, actually, I think I've played 2. And he's very fun. Great Arcana also, which is a nice bonus. That's a good coincidence. So in general, you're like your consistent problem, you would say, is just your early laning stage. Just is this like I would say a mechanical thing, just like you're missing last hits by a few damage, or is it more of a like, do you feel like you're doing something wrong, or do you feel like it's just like, I just missed the last hit because it's like I just calculated in my head wrong?
I think it's a mix. Like sometimes I will try and harass the other person in my lane and then miss some last hits for that, and then afterwards I'm like, that was so not worth it because I'm not going to get a kill, and like all I'm kind of doing is trying to make them back off a bit, but I'm losing out on last hits, which is really what matters here, right? Yeah,
that's fair.
And so there are times where I've done that, or like especially with Monkey King, I seem to die early in lane because I'm like, I've got Jingu, it's fine, and then it won't do enough, or like the support in their lane will come out with a stun or something, and then I'm messed up. So I find that like I'm a little bit too maybe a little bit too aggressive sometimes early on.
It's like the bristleback problem where you're like, oh man, I'm so tanky and like I can deal so much damage. And it's like, no, you're level 1, you cannot do that. You have 0 armor because you're playing Monkey King. Yeah.
So I think I definitely need to hold back, just like get last hits, and then like maybe when I get a couple more items, then go in for a kill, I guess. Or unless obviously my support has a good stun or something, and then
I mean, when it comes to early aggression, the best general rule of thumb, and also just for Dota in general, but it's easier to analyze this in a laning stage situation. A good general rule of thumb is to say who most recently got a good item, and then that person that just got an item should be aggressive or is allowed to be aggressive. So if you're playing the laning phase and you're playing, let's say, like you're playing Monkey King and you have a Skywrath support, and then you have a jungler, so it's just you and the Skywrath, and the enemy team is like a Centaur. if you get your phase and he does not have boots yet, you are advantaged, so you can play more aggressively in that laning matchup, right? Regardless of what Skyrath's doing, if you're both at 100% and you have full mana, whatever, you can play more aggressively on that Centaur because you have phase boots, you have that advantage, and he does not.
Yeah.
But alternatively, if he has tranquil boots, and let's say you had a bad laning phase because their, Earth Spirit or whatever was bullying you early, and he has the boots advantage on you, or, you don't have a poor man's shield yet, and he has a stout shield or whatever, small incremental advantage, he or she can kind of bully you in that way. So when you're in laning phase, definitely think about that a lot. And maybe I would say the simplest way to compute, can I harass, can I be aggressive, or should I not, is just, do they have more items than me, or do I have more items? Or, like, if you are playing anti-mage and you just bought a Ring of Health, sure, you might have more net worth than the enemy offlaner, but you don't have action items in the sense that you don't have, like, phase boots that give you 24 damage and move speed, right? You just have the thing that gives you health. That's definitely something that I always keep in mind when I'm harassing. But again, I mean, I would say if you, especially on heroes like Monkey King, let's see, what's Monkey King's base damage? Even with Quelling Blade, it's good, I know that, and he's a great animation. Terrorblade's probably a better example. Terrorblade's damage sucks. Like, it's just low. Like, even now I need to look it up. But any of these heroes that have like low to medium damage, or heroes that you're just not used to last hitting with, definitely I would focus far more on the purely mechanical, I need to get money aspect rather than playing aggressive. Especially a hero like Terrorblade, like, you can kind of just relax. And, like, if they aggress on you, you pop Metamorphosis and Reflection and you fight them. If they don't go on you, you just hang out, you farm, you have a good time. So yeah, PA also is weird. PA, you can just be throwing daggers out relatively constantly, which is good, solid harass. But at the same time, a lot of offlaners, like if it's a Nyx and he has 3 mangoes and a set of tangos and a stout shield, like, you're not going to harass that guy out of lane.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not going to happen. So in most matchups, though, I would say if you're playing PA, just throw daggers out. If you get an early Blightstone, you can kind of weigh the potential, especially mid PA. This is more applicable, but you can weigh the potential of just harassing with daggers. They get used to being harassed, and then they don't find it as an aggressive motion. They just come to accept, like, hey, every 10 seconds or so, I'm going to take a dagger to the face. That's fine. Then you can surprise them when you have a rotation or whatever, and then just kill them with a blink strike. Mm-hmm. Stuff like that is of the small nuances, but definitely I would say the simplest thing to focus on always is just going more towards that mechanical side of things, right? Because as a carry, you don't really need to be aggressive.
Yeah.
Like, just a general rule of thumb. A lot of carries, you're better off maybe being aggressive. You're playing Lifestealer or something. But in the same time, even if you're not playing aggressive, you still are farming, and that's your primary goal. And harassing and being aggressive is maybe just like a side goal. Like, it's a nice bonus if you get a kill or whatever, but you're better off getting, all those last hits.
Yeah, I think it definitely, like, hurts me in the long run, because also I won't maybe, like, I'll kind of go at a time where I think, oh, maybe I can get a kill, but then I ultimately don't because it's so early. And then also I'll take a load of creep damage too. Like, I won't, like, wait until the wave is clear or something. Like, I will jump in early on, and then I'm like, oh no, why did I do that? Like, it's something I keep doing, and I just, like, I definitely know I shouldn't be doing it, but yeah, it's definitely, I think that's, like, quite a good point, like, looking at their items and seeing what they have. That's actually something I don't do, which I know I should do that.
I would say that is maybe one of the most simple piece of advice, but also complicated in practice piece of advice for people that I give regularly. Looking at people's items is the easiest way to get better at Dota. Like, point blank, bar none. If you want to get better at Dota, A, carry a TP scroll, B, look at people's items. That's all you need to do. Like, your entire life will be infinitely easier if you're saying, hey, I'm leafypeachy, I'm playing Earthshaker off lane. I have Tango, Salve, Mango, Stout Shield. The enemy safe laner has two sets of tangos, and it's a Sven. I know that I cannot play aggressively on this person, right? Because they have eight tangos worth of regen, and I'm a Earthshaker without, like, a bunch of clarities. But if I'm playing, let's say, Centaur off lane, and I came to lane, I randomed, and I came to lane with, like, Ring of Protection and a Stout Shield and a Tango and a Salve, and I think you'll probably still be able to afford, like, a Mango or something after that. you can play super aggressive because who cares? Like, you're super tanky, you have all this regen, and the enemy safe laner is like, I don't know, let's say an AM that went like Stout, Quelling, Blade, Tango, which is the worst opening you can do on supports. I mean, on carries, that's very common, but still very bad. You could just bully the crap out of him. Like, he brought to lane 4 tangos, you brought to lane 4 tangos, all this regen, and all these defensive items. So, that's a much simpler way of thinking about it, but even in the late game, you say, all right, they have X, Y, and Z, I have X, Y, and Z, I can do this, I can't do that, and you pick up those things super fast just from looking at people's items, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was just in a game and the enemy anti-mage surprised us with a BKB. He should not have been able to surprise us because he had shown on the map, but people didn't check his items adequately. And then, he won a team fight because he BKB'd off my Disruptor ult, and then who cares? And that's just like, if I looked at his items, I would have not wasted that ult. I would have ulted the Invoker, and then we would have, we still won that game. We would have won that engagement, and it would have been fine. But instead, I didn't look at the items, and, all was for naught. So, looking at items is the simplest thing to do, and especially in matchups like, well, I shouldn't even say especially anywhere, because it's important everywhere to varying degrees, but it's always super important. So, that's an easy thing to put into motion, although people tend to forget about it. They say they're going to do it, and they don't.
It's something that I'll look at it in, like, when they first come to the lane, but, like, I think what I'll do is I'll look at it, but I won't really process it. So I won't look at it in terms of like, oh, well, they have this and maybe I could go on them when they're down this or whatever. Like, or I don't constantly recheck to see what they've had delivered or what they've got from side shop. Like, I'll have a look early on, and then from then I just kind of forget. And that's definitely something I will keep in mind.
Yeah, it really adds up. Like, I will say, especially because every once in a while, especially, not to stereotype, but especially at lower MRs, you do see people start with objectively like really bad items. And that's when you can really abuse it. Like, for the most part, it's like, using the offlane Earthshaker example, sure, maybe like there's a few different openings. Like, sometimes he'll go Stout Shield, Tango, Mango, Salve. Other times they'll have Boots and a Tango and a couple Clarities, or Poor Man's Shield and Tango or whatever. But all in all, there's not anything drastically different between those 3 items, right? Or those 3 setups, because those are the generally accepted setups. But there are certain setups that are just awful. Like, earlier today I played a game and the enemy or my team had a Wind Ranger mid lane that clearly did not want to play mid lane, but the draft just worked out that way. And they came to lane with I think it was Tango, Salve, and 2 branches. And the enemy mid laner had a Null Talisman, and of course the Wind Ranger lost the entire first 4 creep waves because they had significantly less damage, right? And if the enemy mid laner did not check that, they might have just played the lane like normal. But because they check that and they say, oh, I have all this extra damage on this Wind Ranger, they bullied the crap out of this Wind Ranger, and she was neutered for the entire game, and it was miserable. So a really simple thing like that, just saying, oh, their offlaner doesn't have a Stout Shield and I'm playing Shadow Shaman, I deal 80 damage. Like, this person cannot play this game anymore. The game is fundamentally changed just because I clicked on this person's items and saw they did something very, very dumb. Yeah. So yeah. All right. That was the homework, and then the informal homework of beedub. So Peach, let's go to one of your first questions.
Sure. So I'm wondering, in the early laning stage, should my first item that I go for be a soul ring or boots, or is that just really situational?
So it's a good question. I almost always get boots. Very rarely do I go soul ring instead of boots. I'm trying to think of a situation where I would do that. I suppose the only situation I would go soul ring ahead of boots would be if they did not have supports that could deal with me, and if they have absolutely no kill potential, you're a pretty tanky hero with a bunch of stuns. If they don't have kill potential, boots are kind of, not that necessary because you're not going to get killed, right? Boots are on Earthshaker in the in-laning phase. Boots are primarily an item that you're using to get away from things, right? Because if you're trying to get kills, you do it from a long range away with Fissure, and you don't really need it otherwise. So if they're aggressing on me, then I'll get boots early. But if they have no kill potential whatsoever, I'm not scared, which is very rare because it's a scary time to be an offlaner.
Yeah.
I would go soul ring. So in general, no, I would go at least brown boots before before Soul Ring every game, virtually. Especially if you're bringing 2 clarities to lane, I would say you probably have... You're probably going to have enough mana to get away with not having that Soul Ring super early. I have seen people do like really early Soul Rings where they just rush Soul Ring and they put like 2 or 3 points in Fissure, and then they just, spam out waves and they get lots of last hits. But in general, I don't like that build, and I find it very chancy, and risky is definitely the better word than chancy. But so yeah, I would go boots first, regardless of the build. I mean, that's why people do boots at level 1 even. Like people do the boots Tango 2 clarity or the boots Tango Mango. That's just because early boots are such a big advantage, especially a lot of safe laners are delaying their boots by a little bit because they're getting, let's say they start with the double slipper, Tango, Salve, because they're playing, insert safe lane agility, let's say Terrorblade or Juggernaut or whatever, AM, and then they then have to spend they have to spend the rune gold on getting their stout shield to finish out their poor man's shield. Then they spend their next 200 gold on the quelling blade, and then their next item is, let's say, brown boots, or maybe treads, the full treads, or maybe they're getting brown boots and then a ring of health or whatever. Whereas if you're the offlaner, and let's say you have managed your creeps well, you got your first wave, if your first 400 gold can go straight to boots, whereas they have to wait, let's say 600 gold because they're getting also a quelling blade. Or if you get it at level 1, then you're even more ahead of them in terms of move speed, and they just can't catch up to you unless there's somebody that's super fast, like a Luna. So boots in general, though, are very good early because it's just the safer bet, and you don't really need the Soul Ring that fast, as nice as Soul Ring does tend to be.
Yeah, I just found like I was having a lot of mana trouble early. I guess maybe I need to bring more clarities. Should I go for a mango, bring a mango to lane? Is that more value, or is it just get 2 clarities and an iron branch? My starting items.
I generally don't bother with iron branches as offlaners. Generally, see, now I feel like someone's gonna check my Dota buff and be like, "Oh, well, actually, 3 days ago, you." Yeah, but well,
I always thought an iron branch would be superior to bring to lane as an offlaner because you can get double the healing off of 1 tango.
Yeah, but you're probably gonna get your tangos more away. Yeah. I mean, that's very true. The issue, so the branches on supports and also mid laners are more used for that regen because they need it because they're giving away tangos or they're receiving a less than 4 amount of tangos. Whereas an offlaner, you're buying all your own regen, right? So you have a full set of tangos and, let's say, a mango, which is 1 HP regen per second for however long you keep it. And then you can also potentially have a salve, right? Or you could, let's say, do 2 mangoes. But in general, I prefer to start with clarities, because you're not going to be using the courier super early, and the clarities you're going to be getting use out of regardless of, you're definitely going to get use out of clarities, just point blank, period, end of sentence. Clarities are really good, right? So if you spent that money, it's going to result in you getting money later at some point. Whereas if you have started with, let's say, a salve and a mango, you are going a little bit overboard in terms of regen, especially for an offlaner like Earthshaker who farms using his mana, right? An offlaner like Nyx Assassin is a worse example, but still a decent example. He doesn't need to use mana as much for his for getting CS. He can go in for 3 mangoes. This is actually a really bad example. Nyx is a very bad example because he's weird. He's weird and idiosyncratic. But the Centaur, using that example, he doesn't need to use mana at all, right? Because for last hits, he can use it for stomp and whatnot, but he can just go super far into getting a ton of regen and coming to lane just being a hefty guy that sits in the offlane and bullies. And so you don't need to go for clarities on him, right? You can go for a mango and then a tango and a salve. Whereas an offlaner that is like an Earthshaker, you rely on mana a bit more. So in general, I would prefer to start with something along the lines of Tango, 2 clarities, and boots, or Tango, 2 clarities, stout shield, and maybe you could go in for like a branch or two, or you could, depending on how you math it out, you could go in for the salve. You kind of got to play it by ear and just say, do I expect to be getting harassed a lot or not? If you're against a tri-lane, an expected tri-lane, then yeah, you want to go maybe in for less clarities and more in just for the straightforward, like salve.
So you think no salve?
Yeah, I generally don't prefer salve in the off lane unless
4 tangos and a stout shield is good enough.
It should be. Yeah, I see now. Like again, I feel like I'm gonna get fact checked, and people are gonna be like, "Oh, actually, you don't do this."
Well, we're talking,
theoretically. No, I prefer definitely double clarity tango, and then boots, or double clarity tango, stout shield, and then I usually a mango because I like soul ring, or you could go stout. I mean, you could go salve instead of mango, but it's kind of a personal choice type thing, in my humble opinion. If you're going to be taking,
going the 2 clarities next time.
Yeah, I would go 2 clarities regardless of build. Honestly, that's kind of my firm stance. The only
I mean, obviously, when you hit like level 10, you have like 0 mana problems. Do you take the 250? You always take the mana talent, correct? Because that's what I've been taking every time.
Yeah, vert almost every time. I was gonna say, like, dude, are there any games where I don't pick that up? Let's see. I mean, the alternative is 10 strength. 10 strength is a lot. 10 strength is pretty good. So the way that I would decide on it is that if I'm going for mana boots, which I usually am, I would probably go for strength. And if I'm going in for mana, if I'm going in for tranquil boots early, if I'm having a rough time, I would go in for mana. But in general, 10 strength is something that you're not getting elsewhere, right? If you think about Earthshaker just as a hero and as the items that he builds a bunch of mana items, right? He does not build a bunch of strength items. So the strength is something that you're not getting from elsewhere. Whereas the 250 mana, you're getting mana from your Force Staff, you're getting mana from your mana boots, you're getting mana from your magic wand, you're getting mana from your Yules, you're getting mana from whatever else you buy potentially. Whereas like you don't build any items that give you strength, right? Like I mean, magic wand gives you a couple strengths, and then nothing else. So in general, I would go in for 10 strength just because 10 is a lot. Also, like. You look at most other heroes that have plus stat talents at like level 10, it's like 6 agi. Oh, like Mirana's is 8 agi, I think, or 150 mana. And then other heroes have like 8 agi, 6 agi talents, stuff like that.
That's one thing that I need to get like better at is like if I don't really, when I see something that's like stats, it's like I don't translate that. Like if it's like say on like Medusa, she has like a plus intelligence, I'm like, okay, this is a number of intelligence, I know this gives me more mana, but I don't know exactly how much more mana, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like how much strength every does point he of strength get from that?
It's 200 health. Every point of strength is 20 HP, and every point of mana is it's gonna kill me.
So for every hero, every point of strength is, or doesn't it change? Oh, this is strength gain and intelligence gain that's different per hero. It's not just the base.
Yeah. Okay. So I was correct. So every point of intelligence is 11 mana, and then every point of strength is 20 health. So if you, and that's standardized across every single hero, you get mana. It's just per point. And you're right. Like every hero has a different amount of strength gain. So like Earthshaker, let's see. I don't know what Earthshaker's strength gain is. I know it's pretty high, but if your strength gain is 4, that means you're gaining 80 health per level, and you're also gaining 4 strength, which equates to whatever amount of HP regen. Whereas intelligence, you're getting 11 mana per intelligence. So if you have 4 intelligence gain, you're getting 44 mana. You're getting 0.16 mana regen, and then a tiny little bit of extra spell damage.
That makes a lot more sense. For some reason, it's one of those things where it's like numbers I never really looked into because I just kind of go with the flow. But I thought it was like if you get a stat, like certain stats from something, that it would be different depending on what hero rather than it's like a flat like number.
It's just
so 11 points for for 1 point of intelligence is 11 mana.
Yeah.
And 1 point of strength is how much health?
20.
20. Okay. I'm writing this
so
down.
like an ogre club is going to give you 200 health, and then
agility is armor too.
Yeah, agility gives you, let's see, 7 agility is 1 armor, I believe. And then it gives you 1 attack speed. And I'm just making sure. Okay, so every point in agility increases a hero's armor by 1/7. So 7 agi is 1 armor. So a blade of alacrity is 1 point, whatever armor. And then every point also gives you 1 attack speed, and that's it. And then, of course, if your primary attribute is agility or strength, if you gain a point of strength, you're gaining a point of damage.
Right. Okay.
Right. So like that on Earthshaker, to bring it back, if he's taking that 10 strength talent, he's gaining 200 health, he's gaining 10 extra damage, and then strength also gives you an incremental amount of, it gives you 0.06 health per second, which means that, 10 would give you 0.6 health per second, which is like 60% of a mango, which is pretty good.
Oh, okay. So it seems like overall you get way more, maybe not way more, but like more all around good things out of getting the strength than just getting a flat amount of mana.
Yeah, I would say that. I know I've definitely chosen the mana before, but
because I was picking the mana every time, and because I was like, oh, I get the mana, like I have 0 problems using my abilities anymore, like unless I'm spamming them out like a lot, but like I would be able to walk around the map and like not have to worry about it.
Yeah,
but
whenever I'm making talent decisions, it's always one of the first questions I ask is, especially regarding stats, am I getting this from elsewhere or not, right? So if I'm a hero that is building a bunch of movement speed items, I don't need to be picking a movement speed talent, right? If I'm a hero that's building a ton of strength items, that plus 10 strength from that talent is not as effectual as if I'm a hero that is building a bunch of intelligence items like Earthshaker. If I'm building a ton of mana, getting a 250 mana is not as effectual as getting that 200 health, because I'm not getting health from any of my items, but I am getting mana from all my items.
So like in contrast, Centaur, where you don't build a lot of intelligence items, but you build a lot of strength items.
Yeah, so that's why he gets like his mana regen talent. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, so mana regen talents, a lot of the mana regen talents at level 10 are a big deal because they're on heroes that do not natively get mana regen, right? What heroes I playing like today that has one of those? I've got so many tabs of Dota buff open. They're just all mixing together.
Don't look at mine.
But if you're playing like Pudge has a mana regen talent, right? And that's great because he, unless you're building Mana Boots or Soul Ring, does not have native mana regen. Or Urn also, so maybe not a great example. But he doesn't go heavily into those, right? Like he'll build a Blink Dagger, he'll build in, not an Aether Lens because that gives you mana regen. We're not allowed to build mana regen items for this example. Wind Ranger also, like early game, she does not build mana regen, right? She builds Phase Boots and a Force Staff. And like, yeah, sure, you're getting a little bit of mana regen from that Force Staff. But in general, you are not going heavily into mana regen on that hero, right? So it's a big deal to get that mana regen talent. Zeus also, like he builds a ton of mana regen eventually, but in the early game, he's getting rid of his, right? Because he's building a bloodstone out of his soul ring, and his bottle is often going to be like, you use your bottle a lot in the early game, but then in that mid game, a lot of times you find your bottle empty, stuff like that. So it's a big deal to have that mana regen talent. He doesn't really follow this example necessarily, but mana regen talents are quite good. But yeah, so Centaur having a mana regen talent is a really big deal because he doesn't build this in the same vein that Earthshaker having strength talent does not build strength already, right? So you get that basically for free.
Quickly, what about the other talents? What would you recommend? Like the damage over movement speed, Fisher range over the Echo. That one is probably the biggest one. Like, I'm not sure. I was going with the Echo Slam damage because it seemed like a lot of damage.
Yeah, I definitely... So... Again, like for the level 10 talent, I'm generally picking strength instead of mana. And then at level 15, I would rather have 50 damage than 20 movement speed just because the hero builds mobility items, right? Similar deal. We're already building a ton of mobility. We don't necessarily need to build mobility. We don't need movement speed if we have a Blink Dagger and a Force Staff and a Shadow Blade and boots, right? Whereas
Yes.
damage increases your farm speed, which especially like level 15, that's a point in the game where you are likely going to be wanting to farm a bit more, and you're going to have like one, maybe one and a half, maybe two items, depending on how well your game's going. But this 50 damage is going to help you get that third and fourth item that much faster, just through virtue of hitting people real well. Like that's why the Rubik talent or the Crystal Maiden talents for attacks or for attack damage, they're not for fighting, right? Like Crystal Maiden's attacks damage talent is not so that she can punch people during a fight. It's so that she can farm creeps really well, and like you can get a creep camp and ice one or frostbite one of them and then kill the other one manually rather than having to frostbite both of them, right?
Yeah.
So these attack damage talents on these heroes that are not, physical attackers, they're primarily farming abilities or farming talents.
Okay.
At 20,
That makes
I
sense.
would pick 40 echo damage because 350 fissure range sounds interesting. I know
It
Proud and I talk
seems
about
like
this.
it's like a mistake waiting to happen.
Yeah, it's just kind of awkward. Like your fissure's already real long. Like
Yeah.
it's like giving attack range to Lena. Like it's good, but you have so much already, right? Like fissure range, if you're not hitting somebody with fissure, you're probably still not hitting this person with fissure if you have an extra 350 range. And again, you are so mobile that you should not have this problem that like, oh, my fissure isn't long enough. It's like, well, if your fissure's not long enough, you have a blink dagger and a force staff. Like this is a problem of your own making. If your fissure's not long enough, like that's your fault. Like just fissure better. So don't go for the fissure. Definitely go for the 40 echo damage talent at 20. Also, that's like the phase in the game where people have already been high grounding for a while. Like fissure and echo slam or echo slam, I should say, is like your big ticket ability at this point in the game.
Yeah.
And at 25, I would pick minus 2 seconds enchant totem cooldown instead of 600 health, because less for the purpose of enchant totem and more for the purpose of aftershock. This allows you to stun lock people much more effectively, especially in this phase of the game where if you're a level 25 as an offlaner, as a 4 Earthshaker, the enemy cores have probably had their BKBs for a while and they're down to 5 seconds, right? So your stuns are now hitting a new peak in the game, right? If we think about how abilities peak, a lot of these stun intensive heroes and magic intensive heroes that don't have BKB piercing abilities like Invoker, like an Earthshaker, they have power peaks that are centered around the common timings for enemies to have BKB, right? So your Earthshaker is super effective, then Sven gets his BKB on the enemy team, and then you're a lot less effective for like the next 10 minutes because he's using his 10, 9, and 8 second charges and maybe his 7 second charge. And then his BKB is down to 5 seconds, and then you're back in business. Like, then he blows that, and you can really work around that. Same thing with Invoker or Lena or any of these heroes that have really that are really countered by BKBs.
Sounds good. Makes sense.
Yeah,
For sure.
the only time I'd go for 600 health is if I was for some reason getting initiated on, like if they had a really good, I don't know. That I honestly can't even think of a single time where I would go for that and feel good about it. Like I probably misclicked it once. But yeah, I'm not too worried about 600 health at this phase of the game.
Okay.
All right. beedub. Let's see. Let's get to another question for you, because I assume since you've not been playing offlane Earthshaker, these hyper specific questions don't leave a lot of room for
Not really.
three-way
Although
conversation.
actually, I was wondering why do you go for a blink and a force staff on Earthshaker?
So one of the big things in high ground sieging, and one of the reasons why you see people build Blink Dagger and Shadow Blade or Blink Dagger and Force Staff, is that the way that vision works, you are much better. You're gonna have a much better initiation or counter initiation for that matter by coming in from super far away. And what you do is you Force Staff and then Blink, and by doing this, you're outside of their vision range, usually, unless they have like good warding or, you know, a Night Stalker or whatever. Or even with Night Stalker, a lot of times you'll still be out of vision. And it adds the surprise effect,
Oh, I
right?
see.
It's the same idea of having a Blink Dagger and it being nighttime, let's say, and they don't have ward vision, and suddenly you're on top of them, they don't know.
Yeah.
But if they're sieging and they have good vision, and it's daytime especially, then if you have just a Blink Dagger, you're going to be in their vision, so they know, oh, he's walking forward, he's going to blink on us, and they can leave, they can blink away, they can hit their BKBs, etc. But if you have a Shadow Blade or a Force Staff, you can say, all right, this is my time to go, Force Staff, blink, and then they have no time to react.
Ah, okay.
or Shadow Blade Blink, or just Shadow Amulet Blink. I know that's like most people don't think about using the Shadow Amulet active. Glimmer Cape also works for this, but you can just Shadow Amulet like behind a tower, and the enemy team, unless they have a Necro Book, their odds are they're not going to know that you're there. So you basically have a permanent Shadow Blade waiting for your perfect initiation.
Interesting.
Also, more mobility is always good. Like, just a general rule of thumb, like Force Staff is just like a godly item.
Yeah.
It's just super good.
Okay.
It's like when you blink in, especially, like, you have no escape method, so, like,
Yeah.
they're all going to jump on you, unless you murder them all, but so it's nice to have a backup plan.
Yeah. It does. It has a lot of outplay potential, I would say. That's one of the big factors.
Okay.
All right. So let's go towards the next question, shall we?
Yeah.
B?
So I have a question about my PA starting items. Because actually we
good.
played a game.
I know, and I flamed proud.
Yeah, and you were like, mate, what are you doing? And so, like, I think, we should just have a chat about that, because I don't think we really went into it at the time. You were just kind of like, it's not what I would go for. And we kind of just left it at that. So now's like the perfect opportunity to talk about it. So I currently go Stout, Tango, Salve, Mango. Except actually, I've changed the Mango for a Clarity recently, just because
Yeah,
I think I'm being a little bit more conservative with how much mana I use, and so I
vividly remember this game.
Option. Yeah,
I vividly remember, like, I don't know what I was playing. All I remember is looking at your starting items, and I was just like, I took great offense. So on virtually every safe laner that's an agility hero, I am starting with some variation that gets me a poor man's shield super fast, right?
Yeah.
If you start without 2 slippers, you're going to have problems, right? Because you cannot trade with an offlaner as well if you do not have a poor man's shield. If you have a stout shield and they have a stout shield, they're in most matchups going to come out ahead in this trade. Also, having the poor man's shield early not only gives you the efficacy and the tankiness of a stout shield, but it's giving you the ability to have 6 extra damage, right? Because of the stats from the 2 slippers. Right. And also, like, it's a jungling item as you scale into this like early stage of the mid game where you're going off to jungle as PA. Let's say you're seeding lane to like your Earthshaker 4 or something. You're saying, oh, get your Blink Dagger. I'm going to jungle. This tanks you up a bit. As starting items, I would say almost every game I'm playing a agility safe laner that builds poor man's shield. I am going 2 slippers, 1 set of tangos, 1 salve, and that's it. That leaves me 90 gold. I pick up my rune at the 0-minute rune. I get 100 gold. I have 190. I go creep block. By the time I get to lane, I go to side chop immediately, and I get my stout shield. And now I have poor man's shield, 1 set of tangos, and 1 salve. All that, and then I still have like whatever 10 gold left over after since we're timing up. Then I'm getting my Quelling Blade super fast, and then then you buy whatever other items you need, depending on your hero. Mm-hmm. So on PA, you are using your, your daggers. So you might want to have a Clarity. Clarities are good. But a lot of times I find that I don't mind waiting and ferrying out a Clarity later, because you can't use the Clarity. You can't use the Clarity. You can't use the, the Courier in the very early game, right? Because at 0 minutes, your mid needs it, and then they're going to need it for their bottle, usually, depending on the mid, of course. And so you can't just at like 2 minutes decide, oh, I need to get 2 slippers to finish my poor man's shield, or oh, I need to get my ring of protection to finish my Aki or my whatever. Yeah. So I would say building 1 Clarity is fine in the early game. Mango doesn't synergize well with PA, in my opinion. It's just, you don't need burst mana so much on PA unless you're like in a game where you're getting mana drained. But then that's not an early game problem, so you still don't really need a Mango. Mangoes are nice, but I feel like a lot of people were going them on a lot of heroes that don't necessarily need them in the earlier on in like previous patches when Mango was first put out. Like, people would start like Mango every game on Sven, and every game on Juggernaut, and every game on PA, because it was just a really comfortable item. But nowadays, people are kind of phasing out mangoes. Sven is probably a bad example because Sven's still a good mango hero. But a hero like Juggernaut, you don't really need that early mango because if you just manage your mana better, you don't need this. But even Juggernaut, or Sven, they're using mana in burst, right? Because they're spending 100 plus mana on their Blade Fury or on their Stormbolt. PA, you're using mana gradually over the course of the entire laning phase, throwing daggers, maybe using one or two Phantom Leap things. What's that word? Phantom Strike.
Yeah.
But like that's 50 mana for Phantom Strike, or 15 mana for a dagger at level 7, or 30 mana at level 1, right? So you can ferry out a clarity, let's say when you're finishing your Aki, or if you're just getting, let's say, even just a Basilius. Mm-hmm. It's kind of up to you. Or you just ferry it out later. Like sometime you just need the courier, or your support needs the courier for that matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would never start with a mango, and even if I was starting clarity, I would get one clarity and that's it. Mm-hmm. So I would, think about that. I would have 2 slippers, tango, salve, and 1 clarity, and then I'd be set. I would be getting my stout shield, basically right as I get to lane. You might have to wait, let's say 15 seconds, which puts you a little bit behind like creep wave wise. So if you think about where the creep waves meet, right?
Yeah.
The first creep waves are meeting, let's say you're Radiant. They're meeting like, I would say maybe like 75 units ahead of the entryway into the side shop. And in that early game, or in that first set, you don't want to accidentally miss a creep because you had to run all the way through the creep waves past the offlaner to get a stout shield and then go back. Mm-hmm. So that does put you at a very minor disadvantage, but honestly, you can play around that. So if you want to get 1 clarity, that's fine. I'd be down for it. But you want to have that salve and that 1 set of tangos and a poor man's shield, and that basically will have you set for the entire laning phase. You really shouldn't have any problems with regen after that.
Okay. So I actually haven't been building poor man's shield at all.
Okay.
I've been doing so this is what Proud told me to do, okay? And so I've been doing the Vanguard build.
Yeah.
So I'm
okay,
just not
that's fair.
going.
Then, don't go poor man's shield.
Yeah, so I will get a Sage's Mask and a Ring of Health and stuff. And then, I'll also get a Ring of a Killer before Vanguard.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, are you... So the starting items kind of build into that, right? So
yeah, I mean it does throw a wrench in it if you are going for that early Vanguard, because that's not a build I do. I know Proud really likes it,
yeah.
And I think it's a fine build. I just personally don't do it. Because it's a bit conservative, whereas I like to play more aggressively, and
yeah.
I find that it delays my big items. So it is what it is. But the starting item still, I would still not go mango. Mm-hmm. I would say if you're going in for that early Vanguard and an Aquila, you could do something like, let's see, you could probably start. Let's see, I'm not in a game right now to count to do the math, but you could probably start Tango, Salve, 1 clarity, and a Ring of Protection, and then if you got the money from that first rune, I would say you're probably gonna be about to have the stout shield.
Okay.
You might be a creep away.
Yeah.
No, even then, no, you're definitely gonna be fine. Yeah, because you have even more money. Yeah, you'll definitely get your stout shield, and then you'll already have your Ring of Basilius.
Yeah.
Once you get that Sobi mask, or the Sage's mask, whatever they renamed it to in Dota 2 for copyright reasons. Yeah, that works math wise. I'm fairly certain. So you could do that. Yeah, I'm in my head, I'm trying to do the math, and I'm repeatedly failing. So I'm just gonna assume I'm right, because a Ring of Protection, right, is 175 gold. 2 slippers is 300, right? So you have 125 extra gold to work with. So you can get that extra clarity. Then you're down to 75 extra gold, and you already have 90. So then you have 165 left. So you can't buy your stout shield in base, but you can buy it and then also have 50 gold left over. So you could even get 2 clarities. But if you're rushing that Basti, then you don't really need that. But yeah, that also gives you a bit more of the tankiness, right? Because you get the extra armor from the Ring of Protection. Right. And then you're also having that stout shield, even though you're not going in for the full poor man's shield.
Okay. So But
yeah, personally, I don't do the Vanguard thing. I build Vanguard way later when I'm building my Abyssal. So I had not thought of that, but yeah.
I was going to say, like, so because I'm open to like trying other things out. Like, this is just what I've been doing, just because that's kind of. I was talking to Brad about it, and he was like, "Oh, you should try this." So like that's the reason why I've been doing it. But if I'm not going Vanguard, do you go for like a Desolator instead? I guess that's like your okay.
Yeah, I know. So, like, the Vanguard thing is definitely a thing that I've seen. Like, I mean, I'm looking at the Dota Buff guide section, and there's somebody at 6,000 MMR doing it right here. Like, I've done it myself. I used to do Vanguard first builds on other heroes. It makes you really tanky, but I like to abuse PA's early kill potential and her aggressive potential.
Yeah.
And having a Desolator at, like, 16 minutes with, like, Phase and an Aki and a Poor Man's Shield... Yeah, you're squishy, but if you play around the fact that you're squishy and just avoid, whatever nukes they have, you can play super, super, super offensively. Whereas if you go in for that Desolator, if you go in for that Vanguard, unless you're farming super efficiently, you can potentially run into the problem where you're getting your Desolator at, like, let's say 20 minutes instead of 16, and then suddenly you have run into this issue where your Desolator is coming out at the same time where the enemy team are getting evasive items. They're getting Force Staves. They're getting their own armor items. They're getting medallions so that they can medallion the person that you're attacking, which negates your Desolator effectively, right? They're getting these kind of items, whereas a 16-minute Desolator, it's like, okay, people don't have their real items at 16 minutes, right? Unless they're, like, super ahead, odds are their mid laner is going to have, like, one thing. Their offlaner is going to have maybe just be getting his Blink Dagger, stuff like that. Also, the Blightstone, regardless of what build you're doing, you should have a Blightstone early. That is just like a necessity for you. When you're shipping out your full Aquila, you want to also be shipping out a Blightstone.
Okay.
Or even if you're only shipping out, let's say, like the Ring of Protection and a Blightstone, it's still worth it because the Blightstone gives you an incredible amount. It adds to your kill potential by just a ton.
Okay, that's definitely something I'm not doing right now. So I will.
Yeah, the Blightstone's big. Because like 2 armor is it really does. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it really does make a difference, especially against some heroes that have lower base armor and stuff like that. Like, to use an extreme example, a hero that has 0 base armor, like a Tiny, when you have minus armor against him, you're dealing an absurd amount of damage. The amp damage is just huge. And when you have that 2 armor, it really does, it's amping your damage by, like, let's say 30 damage a hit, potentially. I don't know what the exact math is.
Yeah.
But it really does change the dynamic within a lane, especially in the early game when people don't have armor items. Like, people, unless you're playing against a tied off lane who's building a buckler right away, odds are they're not going to be building for armor. So the Blightstone does make a difference, and the Desolator even more so. Other than that, yeah, I mean, the itemization that I do on PA, and I play mostly mid PA rather than safe lane PA, but I do Poor Man's Shield, and then I go for Phase and my Blightstone, then I finish my Aquila, and then I usually just go straight into Desolator, and after that, I'll usually go right into Abyssal, or if I need to, I'll go BKB.
Okay.
You can get I find I tank up just from the little bit of strength that the, Skull Basher gives you, building into my Abyssal pretty quickly. And you are building into, of course, the BKB at some point, sooner rather than later, depending on the game. Mm-hmm. And so that'll tank you up and compensate for the fact that you've gone for Deso. But the Deso is just a super tempo control-y, like, you get this at 15, 16 minutes, and you just fight, and you win a bunch of fights because you deal such an absurd amount of damage, it doesn't even matter that you're squishy. But going Vanguard first is much more forgiving, that's for sure. Like, you're a lot tankier, to put it as simply as humanly possible. Like, you have a lot more, heft to work with. Yeah. You don't have to worry about getting bursted by Alina because you can survive, her burst.
Yeah, I think, like, it's probably a good thing for me to kind of, like, start out with, because obviously I wasn't as used to her and stuff, but now I have a bit more of a feel for her. I should probably try something different. It's definitely safer, and it trades better, whereas the Desolator builds are much more bursty, right? You're trying to pop somebody instantly so that they can't get their abilities off. Whereas the Vanguard allows you to fight through an entire fight and not have to be concerned about that kind of stuff. So it is pretty game-specific and player-specific, but both builds are fine. It's just, the Desolator stuff, personally, I find suits a more aggressive playstyle that I prefer on PA, so long as I'm winning my lane. If I'm losing my lane and having a hard time farming and whatnot,
then I'm probably going to go play more defensively and go in for, usually an early Vanguard, but some games even like early Hood on PA because it just tanks you up super fast. But that is like more game specific. Like if the enemy team, like I'm just looking at a game right here, the enemy team has a Lina and a Skywrath and a Coddle and a Necrophos. Like a Vanguard's not going to do that much for me. It's just going to give me a bunch of health, right? But a pipe is going to, or not even a full pipe, just a Hood is going to give me way more effective HP against all this magic damage, right? So some games I would do that, but in general, the Vanguard's just a safer thing to do. It lets you fight a little more, and it's more forgiving when you have an extra few hundred health.
Okay.
All right. Do we have another question from, let's say, Peach?
Yeah, I do. How do you feel about quick cast on Earthshaker? Someone in Twitch chat was like, you need to use quick cast. It's really good for Earthshaker, and it will make it easier to like stop cancel your animations.
I don't use quick cast on any heroes ever.
Because I don't either, and I was like, is this something I really need to look into? Is it like that big of an impact, or is that just more of a personal preference thing?
Some people love it. I would say it's pretty personal preference-y. There are some heroes that it's objectively better on, but they're not heroes that I play. Like Meepo is the only one that I really think is truly makes that much of a difference having quick cast on. But personally, I don't have any problems attack animation canceling or spell animation canceling or anything like that without quick cast on. Like
I feel like it's just enough to do that.
Do you just have your stop key bound to S? It makes it really easy.
Yeah, it is. I just I can if I'm planning on doing it, but like my reflexes just in general like aren't fast enough.
Yeah, like if you're about to blink initiate and they blink away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh well, there's my Fisher down.
Yeah, that's definitely just a like mechanical thing. I would say in all the conversations about settings, everybody kind of does it differently, and there are very few things that are like objectively bad, and it just kind of is whatever works for you. As far as I'm concerned, I'm sure like if you're a robot and like playing at the optimal situation without the mechanical personalized aspects, quick cast is probably technically a little faster, but honestly, like it's such a negligible difference. It's just do whatever you're used to. I'm not I don't use quick cast except for like certain. I don't even use it on certain things. Like I know I probably should use it on certain things, but even then I'm like, I don't need this. I've been doing it for thousands and thousands of games without quick cast.
Yeah.
It's like using WASD to move your screen around. Like that I would say is objectively bad, but even then there are like pro players that do that, and it's just cuz they're used to it. So like it is what it is. Like the only thing I would say is like really, really bad settings wise is if you have a really low camera speed, that's when I would be, or like if you have your camera drag up at 50, like that's when it's bad because you're just like failing to give yourself good information. But barring extreme examples, just do whatever you're used to. I wouldn't change stuff except for like I would change. If you're early on in Dota, that's maybe different. Like if you only have like a few hundred games and you're playing with WASD camera, take that off. Like that's not good because it clutters your keyboard in a really awkward, bad way, and it just builds bad habits. It's like I don't know.
That's how I learned to play Dota was with WASD.
It's like
I don't use it anymore, but
I'm just gonna go ahead with the example. So you know how they used to beat kids in school for being left-handed, like, and they would like that. This is a thing, like
yeah, I know.
Have your like parents or whatever ever told you like, oh, when I was in school, like little Jimmy, he was left-handed, and they just like hit him with a ruler until he wrote with his right hand. It's like that, except like that's obviously very bad. But that's the same thing. Like in the short term, that was horrible for that kid. But then, he grows up and he doesn't have to buy a left-handed guitar. He buys a right-handed guitar, right? To take like a less inhumane example, if you're using WASD keys in the beginning, you need to train yourself out of that now. It's going to suck for a while, but 50 games from now, once you're used to using a real setup, you'll be over it, and you'll thank yourself for putting yourself through the struggle of relearning a new setup, because some things are just bad, right?
I feel like my Dota definitely improved after I switched from WASD.
Yeah, yeah. I know there's been a few people that I've talked through .p that have been like, oh man, it's really hard to switch. I don't know if I should. And I'm like, dude, just do it. And some people are still in that transitionary phase. And it does take time, but it will benefit you in the long run to stop using WASD camera, in my humble opinion.
I have another better question.
That was a good question. So I'm excited for this next one. Please. We have time. Dude, this is... Theoretically, shows are supposed to be like an hour, but they can go for as long as they want. Like, the Thursday show is like 90 minutes half the time, so who cares? Time is fake.
Okay, cool. This is one... I had a specific game last night where it was very unfortunate, and I was aiming to offlane Earthshaker, but due to my wonderful team's poor picks, because I first picked Earthshaker, I was shuffled into position 5 with a Spectre.
Oh, okay.
And that was it was against like a Drow or a Ancient Apparition and PA. And we got destroyed in the lane, obviously. But anyways, I got shuffled into position 5. I was already kind of like tilted from the beginning because I was like prepared to go in as an offlaner. I had bought all my items, and I had to like sell them quickly and buy, the support stuff. But I ended up, we got raffle stomped in the lane, and I was really short on money. I was trying to get last hits whenever I could, but they had like a team that kept running at us, and I could not get my Blink Dagger. I couldn't seem to get it. I would get to like 1,500, 1,700 gold, and then I would die, and I just couldn't seem to get my Blink Dagger, so I just went and got a Glimmer Cape instead, and... So basically my question is, at what point, is there like a time frame where you need to get a Blink Dagger on, not necessarily just Earthshaker, but like in general? Or is there like a limit to be like, I need to just stop trying to get a Blink Dagger and like vouch for another item that might be a little more inexpensive at this point?
It's a good question, because that is frequently you do have those games where it's just like my lane if is miserable and I feel like I'm going to get this item super late, so I don't know if I should get it or not. I will say the only time I go for a Force Staff instead of a Blink Dagger first is if I'm against a Clockwork. That's usually just because I want to Force Staff out of cogs. But unless I really need the functionality of Force Staff to Force Staff out of cogs, which is still probably the best example, I would still just save and wait and go for Blink, because your reliable gold is still building up over time. And a lot of times your Blink Dagger, you're getting it just from one fight, practically. Like, you have 1,000 gold that you've slowly, hoarded away over the course of the last 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, whatever. Then you win one big team fight, and then you have your Blink Dagger. Whereas if you spend that 1,000 gold, you're like, all right, I'll get my Staff of Wizardry so that I can get 4 staff. Then it's like, well, you're still 1,250 gold away, and sure, like, you're getting it through reliable gold, but it's still slow. Like, in general, there's no point where I give up and I'm like, I just can't build a Blink Dagger. It's like, no, I'm gonna get this Blink Dagger. Doesn't matter if I get it at 30 minutes or at 25 minutes, it's still going to be a huge game-changing item for my hero. It's kind of
like brown boots, a magic wand, and like wards up until like literally for like 35, 40 minutes. That's all I had. That's like how broke I was. So then I just was like, and my Spectre was like, I'm just going to sit in the base and go to sleep. I don't want to play this game. I was like, please, don't give up. And so we had just broke even with them in a fight. But so I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to buy this Glimmer Cape so I can save my teammates. And so I can maybe glimmer my way in for a like impromptu, because the enemy team wasn't buying like much detection or anything like that. And it did end up, like, the next fight went really well because I was able to glimmer, like, my Spectre at one point and my Necro at another point, because we had a really, like, snowbally PA on the enemy team. And we won that fight. It turned out well, so I was kind of like, maybe I should have gotten this Glimmer Cape a while ago and not... I did eventually get a Blink Dagger because we got a huge swing of gold from that fight, but I was just, that's kind of like where I was like, is there any point where I should just, like, be like, okay... I need to buy an item that will help, because I'm just getting more and more like useless in the team fights as if I don't have like anything to help me. But,
yeah, I mean, when you're committing to the Blink, the Glimmer Cape first, it's kind of like you're deciding, I'm not playing Earthshaker, I'm playing the 5. And that's just kind of like one of those decisions you make that is just kind of depressing. And like maybe it was the right call. Like obviously, if you won that next fight based off that Glimmer Cape, like that was a pretty well worth it Glimmer Cape.
I was playing position 5, but yeah.
That is kind of like you've just relegated yourself to, okay, I'm just playing 5. It doesn't, like, at that point, like, it doesn't matter what hero you're playing, right? It matters that you have a Glimmer Cape and you glimmered a Spectre and she lived or whatever. So, in general, I would say I personally would try to play a little more greedily and just get that blink. Another key thing about this is that how do you skill up Earthshaker? Because how you skill Earthshaker really changes how you farm with the hero.
I've been doing first point in my Q in Fisher, and then I get a second point in Enchant Totem, and then I max my passive, and then I max my Fisher and get my ulti when I can.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, because the big difference is a lot of people put too many points in Fissure early, and that theoretically people are like, oh, Fissure is my main ability. I should be maxing Fissure. No, don't max Fissure. Max Aftershock, and that allows you to farm, and it speeds up your Blink Dagger timing. So in that game, you know, even if
I think that was a shitty game in general.
Yeah, it sounds like a really just like miserable,
it wasn't
awful
a
game.
Good, I don't think it's a really good like thing to use as an example for all games, but I just noticed like in general, because I do play a lot of heroes that get Blink Daggers. I play Tidehunter, I play Centaur, I play Earthshaker. I like heroes like that, Enigma. And sometimes when I'm like stuck and I'm like, it's like 30 minutes, 40 minutes into the game and I still don't have a Blink Dagger and I have enough money to get part of another item or something like that, and I'm like, I don't know whether I should get this thing that will help me a little bit or if I should just wait and take a chance. Hopefully I don't die before I can get this item. I don't want to get further behind, but I also don't want to throw away, this huge chunk of money that I've got right now that might get me to my Blink.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely you have to feel it out kind of thing. Like some games, you just really, really need a Glimmer Cape. It's like, all right, they just have a bunch of magic damage and we don't have a BKB building core. I need this Glimmer Cape so that, like, we win this game, right? But if you're playing Earthshaker, it's definitely, the math on should I commit to this instead of the item I want to buy definitely changes because you are so fundamentally changed as a hero when you have your Blink Dagger. So, yeah, I mean, I think you made the right call in that game, but it is a very hard call to make. And in general, I would almost never stop off and say, no, I'm going to get something else.
So when you reach the point of wondering whether or not you should give up on Blink Dagger, that's probably the point where you're like, I'm just going to go take a few creep camps like right now and just get it. Like take it from my carry or something like that.
I wouldn't like take it out from like their nose. Like if they're killing a camp, don't be that guy that walks over his last hits a creep.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if they're, the thing I always talk about playing support in pubs is just play a little more greedily because it's a pub. Like people are gonna be inefficient. They're gonna leave camps. If it's like 32 seconds, well, okay, so let's say you're playing Dire and it's 32 seconds. Your Spectre has just started farming from the direction of the Dire safe lane tier 1 coming over to the Dire base, right? So they're starting at that hard camp, and then they're moving to that small camp, and then the medium camp. He's not going to get, or he or she is not going to get to the far medium camp in time, right? There's just practically no way. Even an anti-mage is not going to get there in time. So you may as well take this, right? Because otherwise nothing changes. Like, otherwise that farm just goes to waste, right? Because nobody kills it, and then nobody gets the gold. So you may as well get that gold instead of walking over and warding. Like, you can ward whenever. You want to get this extra gold because you need that Blink Dagger. Like, you got to look out for number 1. So if you're on one of these heroes like Earthshaker that really needs a Blink Dagger, you pretty much have to play a bit more greedy. Like, especially at a certain point in the game, like, if it's 40 minutes and you don't have your Blink Dagger, like, something is going wrong, and you need to just, accept the fact that you need to be more greedy, or you're never going to get this Blink Dagger, right? Like, you just have to do it. So, be greedy within reason, of course, but when you're playing a hero like Earthshaker that is so fundamentally changed by a Blink Dagger, that's very different than being like, oh, I'm playing Shadow Demon. Like, Shadow Demon, don't do that. Like, don't forgo warding to get a camp. Because Shadow Demon is not fundamentally changed when he gets his Glimmer Cape or when he gets his Force Staff or whatever. He's better, yeah, but he's not like a completely different, more effectual hero by 1,000%. Whereas Earthshaker is incredibly different and functions so differently in a team fight when he has his Blink Dagger.
Yeah, that answers my question.
B, do you have a quick question
Yeah,
before we close it out? So that I think that would make it, what, 3-3 or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe, hopefully. I don't know. I lost count.
I asked like a million questions within a question. So
I've had a couple of games against offlane Dark Seers, and I just have no idea what to do against that, because in these
it sucks. That's what you
I'm
do.
just
You
like,
just cry.
is that just like, okay, I've lost my lane, like that's it, like it's just lost? Because the couple of games I've had against the solo offlane Dark Seer, like my support isn't doing a whole lot, like isn't really doing much harass, but like it's difficult because then, you know, they just buy like a load of mana regen and like shove that stupid shell on a creep, and then
they start with
like that. Then that's it. Like,
they rush to the soul ring. Yeah,
like what? Like what do I do? What can you do? Can you do anything, or is it just like, well, this is shit?
It's pretty terrible regardless. Like, honestly, it's one of those things that's just not fun to play. And it's like on last Thursday's show, Brad and I, or no, on to this week's Monday show, Brad and I were just talking about like sometimes the enemy team picks heroes and you just don't want to play a position anymore. It's like, oh, they pick Necrophos mid. I don't want to play mid now. Like, oh, they pick Nyx. I don't want to play mid now because all my mid heroes suck. When they pick offlane Earthshaker, you just like have to accept that your game is not going to be fun. Like the general way you deal with it, though, like the way you triage your way out of this miserable situation is if your supports bully them super, super early, that's one way. But obviously, let's just say that's not happening because realistically, that does not happen in the majority of games. If you're playing safe lane and like just theoretically this is 1v1 versus Dark Seer, you have to either go heavily into regen. So one of the things people do on Anti-Mage, for instance, is you will get a point at like level 2 of your mana shield, or spell shield, whatever the heck it's called. But then AMs, they will frequently go double ring of health to counter out the damage from the Dark Seer, which you wouldn't do in any other matchup. But you're building both a Vanguard eventually and a Battle Fury, so you're going to be making use out of both of these items. So you'll go in for both those just to make your lane like more playable and pleasant and not have you be constantly on the edge of death. So you could do like a lesser version of this on other heroes, right? So PA, if you are playing PA and you're saying, all right, I'm going to be building a Vanguard, let's say after my phase boots, I can go in for the Ring of Health super fast and say, all right, I will have at 4 minutes, I'm going to have a Ring of Health, and I'm going to have already gone through my tangos and maybe my salve. Sometimes you start with two sets of tangos instead of a tango salve against a Dark Seer. I think that's a very legitimate build because you do get more regen cumulatively out of these set of tangos rather than the salve. But that's kind of, you can go either way. Sometimes I just buy the salve anyway and I just wait until I'm very low and go and use the salve. But yeah, you'll build that Ring of Health, and then let's say you get your Ring of Health at, let's say, 3 minutes, 30 seconds, and then, you have Ring of Health and a Poor Man's Shield or a Stout Shield and a Quelling Blade. The other general rule of thumb is, especially with the earlier levels of Ion Shell, just kill the Ion Shell thing as fast as possible. That's a safe bet, but that you'll incur a good bit of damage from that. That's just like the reality of the situation. If you're playing support, if you're playing support against a Dark Seer, or if you're playing safe lane and you have a support, just tell your support to kill that creep also. Like regardless of who gets the money, honestly, it just doesn't matter. Like if you have any support, just say, hey, Skywrath, just hit the Iron Shell creep. Done. That's it. But yeah, it just like honestly, it kind of just sucks regardless. But in general, you just have to modify your item build to build your regen items faster, and you have to focus those creeps faster. The other big one is to just kite creeps around the tower. So if the creeps are chasing you around your tower, because frequently against Dark Seer, right, you're going to be under your tower. You want to like when the creeps are aggroing you, you run around the tower and then you double back just to get the last hit on the creep, and then you run around the tower again. And that whole time you're not taking hits from the Ion Shell and you're not taking hits from the melee creeps. You're only taking the hits from the ranged creep. Which like sometimes you'll miss CS because of it. Like it's a little it's something that's simple to do in theory. You're like, oh, I'll just run around the circle, and then when it hits 5 times, then I'll get the last hit. But you will miss CS, but, such is life. It is really, you got to make the best out of a bad situation.
It sucks.
So, yeah. Like, you can counterpick it. Like, the AM is probably a good example of you just counter the Dark Seer by picking AM. You get your early ring of health. You come to lane with, like, a poor man's or like 2 slippers and 2 sets of tangos. And maybe like even a branch, and not the branch, actually, that's a bad idea. And then you just come to lane, you buy your stout shield immediately, you have 8 tangos, and then you'll get your 850 gold as fast as possible. You buy a ring of health, then maybe you buy another, depending on how successfully that person was zoned, how much XP they're getting. Life Stealer also, like, you can just regen off of creeps and kill that. One of the big things about Dark Seer is that since he's pushing the lane so hard, your supports can go do other things, which is one of the small advantages of playing the 1v1 against Dark Seer off lane. You just kind of accept, like, I'm not going to be able to zone this person as a Dazzle. Like, that's just not going to happen. So I'll just leave, and I'll go pressure the off lane, and I'll go play, like, Dazzle Bristleback off lane, and my roaming whatever is going to be in the mid lane.
Okay.
That frees up your supports to go elsewhere. So yeah, I think those are safe bets.
So like I should. So if they're still my support, if they're sticking around in the safe lane, I should probably tell them just go be useful somewhere else because you're not being useful here. Exactly. Either have them kill your creep that has the iron shell on it, especially if they're double shelling. If they're double shelling waves, then you, unless it's a level 1 iron shell, but even then, odds are you're just better off avoiding it entirely. And you can kind of manipulate creep aggro, hopefully, so that the tower will kill those creeps first rather than last. But even that is kind of finicky because creeps are mysterious. But yeah, if your support's not going to be able to just kill the creeps and is not effectively zoning the offlaner, just tell them like, hey, go help the offlaner, go stack, go jungle, go whatever. Like if it's this Crystal Maiden, like she does 40 damage. She's not going to just zone a Dark Seer. Like he's just going to run at her with Iron Shell. Also, if you're playing AM, blink at the Dark Seer, hit him a few times and steal his mana. Definitely be very cognizant of the what's it called, clarities of the Dark Seer. That's a big mistake that Dark Seers make, is they play too aggressively and they don't have their or they're like in range, and then you blink strike them with PA, or you gust them with Drow, they're slowed, or they're knocked back, and then you hit them and get their clarity off, or you blink and hit them with AM, whatever example you want to use. Then if you mess up their first 2 clarities, that really hurts their laning phase in general, because they still want to be in XP range, so that puts them at vulnerability to maybe not die because they're going to have Surge, but they're vulnerable to getting their clarities popped. So be very cognizant of that as well. Yeah, like this, just this one game that just stands out in mind. He was like double shelling the wave. I think he bought 5 clarities throughout the laning phase and also a mango. And I was just like, whoa, what am I supposed to do? Just like under tower crying as a PA.
Yeah, honestly, it's like there's no fun way that turns out. Like that's just not going to happen. So yeah, I'm sorry there's not like, because I've asked this question many times to people and I'm just like, how do you deal with this? And they're like, well, you just kind of resign yourself to the life of playing as Dark Seer. There's just even the good matchups are still not fun.
I feel like actually it's interesting, like you were saying about like AM and stuff. He's just like a hero I've never really played him. Like he's just someone I just don't really think of. I feel like you don't really see him in that many games at the moment. Or I haven't seen him in a while. Is he played that much? He doesn't seem to be played that much.
He's
at the
situational. He's situational, and ever since they've been changing around like the jungle and stuff like that, he's kind of fallen out of favor in the last couple patches because people don't play as like 4 protect 1s as much, right? Yeah. Like you don't see your specters or your anti-mages like, oh, let's make space for the anti-mage. Now you see like the mid game, oh, let's skirmish, let's fight, and then let's push with a Lycan, or let's push with the Juggernaut combo, let's push with whatever. So I think that's one of the reasons why AM has fallen off a bit, even in pubs. Also, like with Rod of Atos being buffed, so like there's just a lot of CC that's available to control an AM.
Right. Yeah.
Even though like his Ags is quite good, but even then, if you're getting focused, you're still not having a fun time.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why AM has fallen off a bit. I love AM. I would say he's my favorite carry to play by a decent margin, and I still like My last AM game was a month ago.
Oh.
And I've been trying to play AM for like weeks, and like we were talking on the Monday show, like I just can't, like, because either it's not a good AM game, somebody else is taking safe lane, or he's banned. He's banned in tons of games. But yeah, AM is very mechanical. If you want to like be made painfully aware of how weak you are mechanically, play AM for like dozen games, and then just look at other people play AM. And be like, oh man, I got my Battlefield at 15 minutes. I feel really good. And then you look and it's like, oh, that guy got it at 12. Oh man, okay. Like AM's great though. Like he will refine your mechanical skill like no other hero. Like he's a good hero to practice. I learned how to tread
switch with him.
Yeah. He's great for tread switching. He'll teach you how to tread switch. He'll teach you how to optimize farming rotations. That's another big one if you're learning to play carry, is just realizing, okay, it's 32 seconds. I'm playing AM. I can blink 4 times, and I want to get the optimal amount of farm, so I'm going to go to X camp, Y camp, Z camp, and then back to the beginning. And then it's going to respawn, and they'll be fine. And then maybe I can't kill the last camp, so I stack. Or, I'm trying to farm so that I can push out the off lane. I'm going to go farm through the triangle this way, and then I'm going to do this, and yada, yada, yada. So if you're trying to, like, really optimize your farming patterns and whatnot, AM is a great hero to do that on.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely something I'm weak at.
Yeah, he does get punished pretty hard, though. But I would say AM is a great hero to learn and to practice on. He's very, like there's a reason why certain heroes are, like, classic in their position.
Yeah.
It's because like AM is a classic carry just because he doesn't do anything else, right? Like AM is just he farms and then he shows up with a bunch of items and he wins the game, or he farms and he shows up with a bunch of items. The enemy carrier has just as many items, then you lose. Yeah. Like it's very simple, right? So yeah, AM is very solid to have in your repertoire, especially as a counter pick in certain games. Okay. In certain games, he's just amazing. But in certain games, he also sucks, and that's why I can't play him often. It's like if they don't have any CC, it's like, all right, they have no stuns on their team. Oh, great, I'm gonna play anti-mage, and then they're just never gonna catch me, and I'm gonna split push, and unless they 5-man with like a Clinks, I'm probably gonna be fine, and I'll just win.
Yeah.
Through virtue of just like being a nuisance.
Maybe I'll give him a go.
So yeah. All right, so this has been Teach Me Tuesday. It has been hopefully a enlightening episode. I think I'm going to need to assign some quick homework here.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like since we talked about Earthshaker for Peachy's entire segment, I can't just give you Earthshaker homework again because that's like cheating. Then again, you could get like an extension on your homework because of the hurricane. But then again, it's been like 2 weeks, so you don't get an extension. Let's see. That would make it easy on me, though. If I were to give Peach homework, I would say for the next TMT, I would like to hear back on some diversified item builds, I would say. So even if you're playing Earthshaker, let's say you're not just going Blink Force every game. You're thinking, all right, I went Blink first. My second item is going to be a Glimmer Cape because I need it. Or my second item is going to be a Shadow Blade because I need it. Or my second item is going to be a Force Staff or a Lotus Orb or whatever. Earthshaker is like not as good of an example as this because his first item is so rote and simple. But
I can play other heroes.
Yeah, I mean, even Earthshaker is fine, right? Because your second and third item, you might be switching up the order at the very least and saying, all right, in this game, I went for a Force Staff second because they had an Invoker who was playing a Yule's combo and I just needed to force out of it. Or, they had I was going to use Invoker again, which is kind of a bad example. They had Lena, and I needed to get out of his stuff, or I needed to avoid yada yada yada, or I needed a Shadow Blade because
shying away from your favorite heroes, Ursi.
Well, I have my Dota buff on my one of my monitors, and at the top is Invoker, so I was like, Invoker, Lena,
okay, sorry.
Yeah, or like second item Pipe, stuff like that, or like other heroes. Probably better examples, somebody like if you played Disruptor, right? Some games are going to build a Force Staff first, other games are going to build the Yules first, other games are going to want a fast Aether Lens because, X, Y, or Z. So try to diversify up your itemization on specifically offlaners since you're focusing on offlane. Okay. Even just reordering things. And I would say more so than just building weird things, don't just build weird things. Make like mental notes saying, all right, in this game, I was playing Earthshaker. I went Blink Dagger, and then I went Shadow Blade, and then I went Yules. I built the Yules because they had a Skywrath, and Skywrath got Aghanim Scepter at 42 minutes. And because he had this, he was suddenly silencing me when before he had not been silencing me. stuff like that, right? And thinking more dynamically about itemization going into the mid game, because we already focused a bit on early game.
Okay.
Okay, and let's see, beedub I was gonna say for your homework, just play against Dark Seer, but I wouldn't do that to anybody.
Please.
Let's see. I would say, since we were talking about like your early game like laning phase specifically on carries especially, and if you are still having mechanical problems, I would say try to set very clear benchmark goals for last hits. Say, all right, at 10 minutes, I want to have X amount of last hits. Like the very reasonable goal that everybody should try to hit is at least 50 playing safe lane carry. Okay. But, maybe try to ramp that up to like something like 60 or 70, depending on what your comfortability is on a given hero, right? So if you were like playing anti-mage for the first time, you're probably not going to be getting 70. But if you're playing PA for the 1,000th time, you're probably going to be getting, at least 65. Okay. So try to set some benchmarks. And, you don't have to like make an Excel spreadsheet or anything, but like pay attention to in certain lane matchups, like, oh, they aggroed against me, so I only got 42 last hits at 10 minutes. But in this game, they didn't aggro against me. I had a free lane, but I still only got like 53. Stuff like that. That's like the simplest way that you can really gauge whether your problems are mechanical and just, oh, I'm missing last hits, or they're fundamental, like I should have pulled, like, because carries pull sometimes, right? Like to get more last hits, stuff like that. So pay more attention in the laning phase to just purely mechanically making money, like just getting gold. The carry, hear those ching ching sounds. Yeah, basically.
The best sounds.
Or ka-ching, ka-ching. I was thinking about the EXO song.
Ka-ching, ka-ching.
Yeah, so focus on that. It sounds a bit simplistic, but you will definitely notice trends over the course of multiple games, specifically against like, oh, I played against X offlaner and I had a really good time and I got 53. But this time I played against the same offlaner, but I was playing a different hero and I only got like 48 or something. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I'm really having trouble on Drow or whatever. Because then that'll show you exactly what to practice in future games. Just even in like bot matches, you could say, all right, I'm just going to go and play Drow. I'm going to play the first 5 minutes of Drow 5 times. It only eats up 25 minutes of your day, but you're getting like an accelerated like training course on how to last hit with Drow, because you're just replaying that same miserable like 43 damage early game over and over again. Okay. Okay.
That sounds good.
So hopefully that is adequate homework, and I will. Well, maybe I'll be checking it, or maybe Proud will be checking it, depending on what the combos decide. But we have been Teach Me Tuesdays. Man, I had a really good closing last time I hosted this show, and I can't remember it in verbatim. So, man, I should have written that down. But we've all learned a little bit about each other. We've all learned a little bit about Dota, and hopefully we've learned a little bit about ourselves. So, on that note, I'll end Teach Me Tuesday. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And you can follow us, of course. I already closed the show, so I can't really, I shouldn't be doing this now, but you can follow us at Ursinity, at leafypeachy, and at beedub, and at @w_show, discord.gg/.p, whatever. Order is nonsense. Let's just close the show out, shall we? Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening.